A man was fishing 130 miles offshore in the North Pacific when he spotted something he couldn't believe. A tiny grizzly bear cub alone, swimming in open ocean, shivering and exhausted. No land in sight, no boat, no reason for him to be there. Everyone told him it was impossible, that no bear could survive that far out. But what happened next shocked scientists and healed something broken inside the man who found him. This is not just a survival story. It's a story of instinct, rescue, and the kind of connection you never see coming. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us bring more unforgettable wildlife stories like this to life. The Gulf of Alaska is a place of silence and chaos. When it's calm, it can look like glass. When it's angry, it can break ships in half. And for Michael Talbot, a 39-year-old marine biologist turned deep-sea fishing guide, it was his escape, a place where no one asked questions and the only voices belonged to birds and waves. He was on his fourth solo trip of the season, 130 m from shore. No radio chatter, no crew, just his boat, the Argonaut, a bucket of chum, and a list of things he was trying to forget. Mid-morning, just as the fog began to lift, he saw it. Not a whale, not driftwood, a head, small, round, moving strangely. He grabbed his binoculars, squinted, and nearly dropped them. Was a bear. No, a cub. Fur slicked down, ears back, eyes barely above water, swimming alone. Michael's mind spun. Was there a boat nearby? Had a mother drowned? Had the cub fallen off something? It didn't matter. The current was strong. The cub was slowing, and no one else was coming. He turned the wheel, gunned the motor. As he approached, the cub didn't flee, didn't even react. It was past fear, past flight. It was just trying to survive. Michael killed the engine, threw out the net. The cub didn't resist. He slid beneath the frame like seaweed, limbs paddling weakly. Michael knelt on the deck, grabbed hold and heaved. It collapsed onto the wet floorboards, coughing, shaking, eyes open, barely breathing. Michael looked around. 360 degrees of open water, then down at the bear cub, no more than 6 months old, and said out loud, "What the hell are you doing out here?" There was no answer, just the sound of waves and a story neither of them expected to survive. The cub lay still. Salt water dripped from its fur, soaking the deck. Its legs twitched, not from fight but from fatigue. Its breathing was shallow, its mouth slightly open, tongue limp against its lower jaw. Michael crouched beside it, unsure of what to touch, what to do. This wasn't a stranded dog. It wasn't an injured seal. It was a bear. He grabbed a dry towel, an old one from a tackle box, and gently laid it over the cub's back. It shuddered, but didn't move. Michael turned off the BGE pump and brought the boat to idle. The sea was glass now, the sky wide and indifferent. The cub blinked just once and exhaled a weak sound. Not a growl, not a whimper, more like air escaping. Something too small to fight anymore. Michael muttered to himself, "This isn't supposed to happen. There's no land for hours. How are you even here?" He opened the small galley door and brought out a clean water bottle. poured some into a shallow tin, held it. The cub didn't drink. He stared out at the horizon. He could call for help. Satellite radio still worked. But then, what? He didn't know the law for this kind of thing. Didn't know who to report. And besides, if they sent a chopper or patrol boat, what would they do? Tranquilize it, put it in a cage, let it die. He sighed, then lifted the cub gently and carried it inside the galley, wrapped it in a second towel, set it near the base of the heater, closed the door. The boat rocked softly. An hour passed. Michael checked on the cub every 10 minutes. No change until suddenly the cub moved, lifted its head, looked directly at him, eyes dark, alert, and something in that look stopped him cold. He'd seen things die before. He'd seen animals resign themselves to the sea, the cold, the current. But this cub, it hadn't given. It had trusted him, not because it should, but because it had nothing else to trust. Michael crouched again. I don't know where you came from, he whispered, but I think I'm taking you home. He didn't mean a cabin or a pen. He meant land, safety, fence. That night, under a pale moon, the Argonaut turned west toward shore, and Michael, for the first time in years, felt like he wasn't running away, but finally carrying something that mattered. By morning, the horizon was gone. Clouds had moved in fast, dark, low, and churning. The Argonaut pitched slightly on the waves, and Michael felt it in his stomach before he saw it. The wind had changed. He checked the radar. A small front, not a full storm, but enough to turn a calm ride into something unpredictable. Inside the galley, the cub, Dusty, he'd started calling him, had curled himself tighter into the towel nest. He was no longer limp, but still too weak to stand. He blinked when Michael entered. Their eyes met just for a moment. Michael had seen that look before on people, combat survivors, drowning victims. The look that said, I'm still here, but barely. He crouched down and set another dish of water nearby, dipped his fingers in it, touched the cub's nose. Dusty flinched, then licked his hand, just once. Then the boat slammed sideways. The tin bowl slid across the floor. Michael caught himself against the wall. Okay, he muttered. That's it. Time to lock down. He placed Dusty in a dog crate padded with old life vests. Not because he wanted to cage him, but because the next few hours weren't going to be safe for either of them. Strapped the crate to the floor with bungee cords, closed the galley door. By noon, the sea was rising. Waves slapped the hull hard enough to rattle bolts. The bow dipped and kicked like it had a pulse of its own. Michael stood at the helm, knuckles white. He hadn't navigated in these waters solo since his brother's accident, since the day everything changed. But this wasn't about running anymore. A crash behind him. He spun. Can had fallen. Dusty whimpered inside the galley. Michael cursed, pulled the throttle back, and staggered toward the ground. Dusty was shaking, not from fear, from motion. The whole boat throbbed, like a heartbeat gone wrong. Michael knelt beside the crate, reached in, and the cub, weak, confused, terrified, pressed his snout into Michael's hand, and stayed there for 10 minutes. Man and bear rode the chaos together, one hand on fur, one paw against skin, both waiting. By sunset, The sky began to clear. The wind fell back. The ocean stretched again like it had just exhaled. Michael opened the crate. Dusty stepped out, legs wobbly, but standing. He blinked, then let out a soft hoarse sound. Not pain, not panic. Relief. Michael slumped against the wall, wiped salt from his eyes, then whispered, "We made it, kid. Both of us." 3 days after pulling the cub from the sea, Michael spotted land. A jagged green edge rising beyond the waves. The southern coastline of Kodiak Island. The moment hit harder than he expected, because getting back didn't mean it was over. It meant something new was about to begin, and he wasn't sure how to face it. Dusty was stronger. Not healthy, not yet, but stronger. He could stand now, walk a few paces before collapsing beside the crate Michael had transformed into a den. He ate canned salmon from a spoon, drank water on his own, watched Michael constantly as if afraid he'd disappear if he blinked. When they pulled into the harbor, Michael called ahead, not to a rescue center or a vet, but to an old friend named Tarun, a wildlife biologist who had spent years documenting bear populations near the island. She arrived before the boat even docked. Brown ponytail, ranger jacket, clipboard in hand. Her face turned pale the second she saw Dusty. "You're kidding," she said. "That's a grizzly cub." Michael nodded. "I found him swimming 130 m offshore." Taryn stared at Dusty, at the boat, at Michael, then back again. "He should be dead." Michael didn't answer. He was still trying to believe it himself. Tarun knelt by the crate. Dusty blinked, didn't retreat, just watched. "He's imprinted," she said. "Least partially. He's comfortable around you." Michael frowned. "Is that bad?" "It depends what you want for him." That question lingered as they carried Dusty to a temporary shelter behind Tarun's office. A quiet wood-paneled holding pen. Warm, safe, and for the first time, Phil. Dusty slept for 12 hours straight. Meanwhile, Michael sat across from Tarun at her desk, hands folded, heart full, and for once, unsure what to say. "You should know," she said gently. "Fish and wildlife is going to want answers. A cub that far offshore. There are legal questions, biological ones. He's not tagged. He's not on record." Michael's jaw clenched. "So, what happens now?" Taran sighed. "Worst case, he gets classified as non-releasable. Best case, he gets relocated to a sanctuary upstate. But he's young. He has a shot at rehab. Real wilderness release." She paused. "But if he stays with you much longer, that shot disappears." Michael looked out the window. Dusty was curled beneath a heat lamp, twitching in his sleep. "Phil, here, still holding. Can I be part of it?" Michael asked. "Part of what?" "His rehab, his process. I don't want to own him. I want to finish what we started." Tarun didn't answer right away, but her eyes softened and finally she said, "Let's find a way." The first post came from a harbor worker. A photo. Michael standing beside the Argonaut. Dusty in the crate. A caption that simply read, "This guy pulled a baby bear out of the ocean. I'm not joking." Within hours, it was everywhere. Reddit, Facebook, local Alaskan news. The National Grizzly Cub. Found at sea. Bear saved from drowning. In open water. Fisherman's wild rescue sparks. Conservation. Debate. Michael didn't read the comments. Tarun did. Some praised him as a hero. Others questioned his sanity. Some called for Dusty to be immediately relocated. Some accused him of staging. But Dusty didn't know any of that. He only knew the feel of Michael's voice, the warmth of the towel, the sound of a man who every morning whispered, "Still here, buddy." Tarun set up a schedule. Feeding, physical assessments, interaction limits. Enough care to heal, not enough to bond permanently. Michael followed it, mostly, but every now and then Dusty would nudge his palm, rest his muzzle near his boots, fall asleep against the side of his leg, and Michael wouldn't move. Journalists started calling. Production company offered a documentary deal. Tarun refused them. "Oh, this isn't a circus," she told one reporter. "It's a second chance for both of them." Dusty made progress. He walked longer, ate without help, even tried swatting at a low-hanging branch one day, wobbly, awkward, but determined. They took videos, measured weight gain, tracked behavior, and every note ended the same way. Instinct appears intact. Human dependence minimal. Potential for release possible. Then came the visit. Officials from the Department of Fish and Wildlife. They observed, asked questions, took samples. One of them, an older woman named Clark, approached Michael as he was cleaning out Dusty's pen. "You know, this doesn't usually end well," she said. Michael nodded. "I know. You broke protocol." "I know." She looked through the mesh gate. Dusty was asleep in the shade. Pause. Twitching. "He's not afraid of you." "No," Michael said quietly. "He's not." She studied his face, then asked something he didn't expect. "Do you think he'd survive out there?" Michael didn't speak right away. Then, finally, he already did. Once. Clark said nothing more, just turned and walked away. The report would take weeks, but something was changing. Not just in Dusty, in Michael. He had come to the sea to escape, but found himself anchored, not by guilt, not by duty, but by a life he never expected to hold in his hands. They called it the reintegration zone. 3 acres of fenced wilderness on a remote slope just outside Kodiak, dense with brush, shallow streams, and hidden dens built into the hillside. It wasn't real wild, but it was the closest Dusty would get before they made the final call. Michael stood at the edge of the zone, backpack slung over one shoulder. Dusty was already inside, released 20 minutes ago through a rear gate by Tan. The bear hadn't looked back. That was a good sign, a painful one, but good. Tarun joined him at the observation blind, a wooden box with a one-way glass window. Cameras lined the trees. Dusty was moving now, not fast but deliberate. "His weight's right," she whispered. "Muscle definition, too. And he's scanning. You see that? Smelling, listening. He's alert." Michael nodded, but didn't speak. Dusty sniffed a log, pawed at the moss, raised up briefly on his hind legs to check the air. He didn't cry, didn't search for people. He acted like a bear. For 3 days, they watched him. He foraged, drank from the stream, dug into a patch of soft earth to nap during. They eat. Each night, Michael sat beside the glass, watched until the light faded and whispered, "You're doing good, Dusty. Keep going." On the fourth day, Dusty startled a raven and chased it. Clumsy but playful, Taran smiled. "That's the final box. He's recovered emotionally. No more freezing. No more trauma indicators." But Michael didn't smile, because what came next meant letting go. At the end of the week, the decision came down. Clark returned. She reviewed the footage, read the logs, walked the zone alone, then handed Taran a folder. Release approved. Conditional monitoring. Subject displays natural behavior. No critical imprinting. Suitable for wilderness reintegration. Michael stood still as she explained the terms. Dusty would be tagged, released, on a protected range inland. Remote cameras would monitor movement for 60 days. No further human contact allowed. Any last objections? Clark asked. Michael shook his head, but something inside him cracked. Not out of sadness, out of pride. That evening, Dusty slept beneath a tree stump at the far corner of the zone. The next morning, he would walk through a gate and into the real world. Michael wrote a note, taped it to the edge of the gate post. It read, "You were never mine to keep, but you were always mine to care for. Live big, Dusty, and don't look back." Then he turned and walked away. The gate opened at dawn. No ceremony, no cameras, just a field crew in silence, and one young grizzly bear standing at the edge of a new world. Dusty didn't hesitate. He paused, sniffed the breeze, then stepped forward into the trees. And just like that, he was gone. Michael didn't watch the release in person. He couldn't, not because it hurt, but because it felt right to give Dusty what he'd earned, a future with no audience. Instead, he stayed at Taran's office, watching from the tracker feed as a blinking dot moved steadily inland, across the foothills, past the first ridge, into a dense patch of forest near stream. 3 days later, a trail cam captured a blurry photo. Dusty, upright at a tree, marking strong, solid, confident. Michael stared at the photo for a long time, then closed his laptop and stepped outside. The sea air hit him harder than he expected. It smelled like that morning, the one when he first saw the small, wet head bobbing in the current. So much had changed since then, and yet something in him had just begun. He didn't go back to guiding full-time, didn't chase fame, didn't tell his story for money, but he did start speaking to schools, to conservation groups, to young volunteers who wanted to know how to make a difference. He always started the same way. Sometimes the thing that changes you doesn't arrive on your doorstep. Sometimes you find it floating, lost, 130 m from shore. Dusty was spotted twice more that season. Once crossing a shallow river, once following a moose trail deeper into the range. No signs of distress. No signs of approaching humans. Only movement, only life. Michael kept the towel, the one he first wrapped Dusty in, folded, stored in a box near his bed, not as a souvenir, but as a reminder that no rescue is ever small, and some stories don't need a loud ending. They just need to go on. If this story touched you, if you believe in second chances, subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness, even in the middle of nowhere, can change everything.